Hello, everyone. I've been chasing Tricia for last, I don't know, about 6 or 8 months to get her on Grow with the Flow podcast with us. And today is my lucky day. We've finally been able to get her on the call. Tricia, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Why don't we start with, a little bit about you, what you've done and what are you currently doing with More Essentials?
Well, thank you very much, Manan. I'm sorry it was difficult to get me on your show. I'm so pleased to be here and to have this conversation with you. Let me give you a little bit of background. I have been a headhunter for almost 30 years. I have owned a firm for 25 years in February, so that's a big, exciting
Wow.
accomplishment, 25 years.
Yeah.
And then about a little over a dozen years ago, after building out my firm, I started training and speaking in the recruiting industry.
Mm-hmm.
That turned into private coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And now that is taking up the vast majority of our time in the recruiting industry, is helping small search firms get their systems and process in place, implement best practices, and ultimately get to the revenue goals that they're trying to achieve.
Okay. All right. So, um, in terms of how you go about your coaching and your philosophy about this, what sets More Essentials apart from a host of coaching and education programs out there?
Well, that's a great question. I think there's a lot that sets us apart. For starters, our coaching program is one-on-one. I've been in a lot of group coaching programs where I have gotten tremendous value, where I have been able to look at the experiences of other people and gain insight from it. So I don't want to say that group coaching doesn't work, because it works. It's worked for me in a lot of different areas of my life. But what we have found we enjoy the most is being able to get a little bit more granular with our clients. Like, there's a lot of issues that recruiters are faced with that they just don't want to talk about in a public forum with all of their peers listening as they, get past some of the things that are holding them back or flesh out really creative, innovative ideas. We want to do that maybe a little bit more under the covers. And so I have found that being able to coach solo practitioners and small firm owners in their businesses with their staff and their lives and expanding and getting to achieve the things they know they're capable of, that has been an absolute joy for me. I didn't know I was going to enjoy it quite as much as I do.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of times it's just you don't want to sound like the stupidest one in the class, and and you kind of don't want to hold a lot of other people back with your specific problem. So I can definitely relate to that. So we just before we started recording, Tricia, we were talking about AI for recruiters. Now, that is something that it's about marketing, content marketing, something that I'm quite familiar with. Why don't you tell us more about that?
Sure. So AI for Recruiters is a brainchild of Jason and I. Jason is my training partner. And we had a situation going back maybe at this point, it's probably only 8 weeks ago, so this is pretty new, where I came across this software, and it was an artificial intelligence not for the recruiting industry. It is not at all positioned in the recruiting industry, But I found the software and I started using it, and candidly, I was just blown away by it. I had never seen software that functioned at this level before, that was so intuitive and easy to use. So I started using it. And when I saw what the application of this software was to the recruiting industry, we decided that what we wanted to do was really bring it to the recruiting industry, show the recruiting industry how they could make changes to their desk that ultimately massively increase their efficiency and drive new revenue. And it's cheap. It's cheap software. It's like, depending on the level, like $50 to $100 a month. It's not expensive. It's not a big investment.
Yeah.
So what Jason and I did was we started getting real good with the software, brought it to the recruiting industry about a month ago in AI for Recruiters, AI4recruiters.com. And what we use it for, like I keep it open on my screen all day long. I can go into this software and basically, let's say, describe my candidate. So I could say my candidate is a mechanical engineer with 10 years of experience. He's very smart. His friends like him. He's really good at CAD design. I mean, like, these are first grade level sentences about my candidate, and I can list them into the software, and then I can decide what tone I want it written in, whether that's professional or witty or funny or polite, or there's over 150 different tones. And I click one button and it rewrites all my content for me real time. And it's compelling content. Like it's better than what, I'm sorry to all my Church of Executive Search members, but the software writes better than half of my coaching clients.
Well,
it does. I mean, it's really very good. Now, there are recruiters out there, I think, that are outstanding writers. It comes easy to them.
Yeah.
They're good at selling through their writing when they're presenting a candidate. They're good at it. Those people probably wouldn't need this as a solution.
Sure.
But the people that have trouble figuring out what to say, and they spend a lot of time doing candidate presentations, doing client proposals, trying to write blog posts. Heck, if they spend a lot of time trying to come up with subject lines or email marketing content, like right now, we have this software doing that for us across the board.
Sure.
I was using a grumpy tone because it's actually a pretty good tone. And my software dropped an F-bomb. I didn't, the software did. Like, you have to put human eyes on it to make sure that it's, accurate and it's what you want to say, but the level of efficiency that we're reaching using this software for any time that, you need some help writing, which is often as a recruiter. Yeah, I've just found it to be incredible. So we're using it we have the ability to basically build out templates or recipes for it. And so we're using it for job postings. We're using it for candidate presentations. That's a really good one. But job postings, it'll write the whole job description for you.
Yeah.
We've used it I just did a training in our group on it where we wrote, it took me 20 minutes. And what I did was used the software to build out a 5-email candidate sequence for email marketing.
Well, that can be.
Oh God, yeah, I did it. I wrote a five different emails for the sequence, and I wrote it with the software in under 20 minutes. And I recorded the whole thing and put it into our group, and I loaded the document with the 5 emails. Like, I think this software is so amazing that I am just training people on it, on how to use it on their desks. Our training doesn't cost anything extra for it.
Well, that's actually fantastic. Now, one of the it's not always easy to write multiple variations of an email. Basically, if you're reaching out to prospective clients, prospective candidates, you have one core message, but you want to embellish it with all the different kinds of words, different kinds of sentences to avoid repeating the same message or the same kind of an email. So that it can be very helpful over there. And the second thing is, and where I think it can have more far-reaching implication, is content marketing, right? So for the most parts, content marketing, writing blogs, and things like that have been, mainly been used by large agencies, large software companies like us, but not something that a small executive search firm can do, right? In terms of either money or the time and the effort that it takes. Now, this changes if it's able to create great blog posts. It changes some of those possibilities. What do you think, Tricia?
Yeah, Manan, I've spent years screaming from the rooftops to anyone that would listen to me that content marketing is stupid. Like, it's in our space for what we do, it's stupid. Like, I would ask people, Jason and I would be speaking at one of the conferences, and I'd be like, okay, raise your hand. The last time you were doing research and you hit a blog post from someone and then you bought their product. When's the last time? How many people have done that? That doesn't happen to a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it just isn't how we typically buy as consumers, or not how we buy often. I think there are people that do all of their research, hit a blog post, like it, start exploring, get on a list. They go through a whole sequence or cadence.
Yeah.
And then they ultimately become a customer, right? I think that does happen. I don't think that in the past it has made a lot of sense for solo practitioners or small firm owners to invest in content marketing. It just didn't make sense. It was terribly hard to measure any ROI. Recruiters are inherently not the best writers, right? And you have to have a writer to be able to put the content out. Yeah. And it just didn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Like, we weren't going to see a lot of revenue from it. Right. But if you can eliminate 95% of the work, now content marketing makes a whole bunch of sense. It makes sense to have a keyword strategy. It makes sense to put blog posts out. I mean, using this tool in front of a webinar that we did, which the recording is at the bottom of that website, AI for Recruiters. But we did 37 blog posts in 24 hours. Mm-hmm.
Wow, okay.
Okay, like, we're not a big, robust team, right? Like, and we all have other jobs to do. But I mean, we were able to get that out super fast because the tool is so efficient. Yeah. So I think it's important that recruiters are looking at other industries. And like, this isn't a recruiting tool, but my gosh, if we can take something that is this good at what it does and apply it to our industry to increase our efficiency. I mean, if I could give every recruiter I know back 25% of their time, my guess is their revenue would increase by more than that.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, there is a lot of creative block when it comes to writing great stuff. And I've been writing all my life. Actually, my first business per se was starting a blog back in 2010. Wow, it's been more than a decade, but that was my first business. Paid pretty well, but and I started writing. I've been writing for so long, and even now, if you tell me that, hey, I gotta create a sequence of 5 emails or write up a blog post, it's going to take me time, right? And even with the kind of practice that I have, and something to help you out along the way is always fantastic.
Well, it is. One of our coaching clients, Rich Rosen, he's just a gem. And one of the things that he did, he struggles, like he has a great texting strategy. He does awesome texting and emailing both. I mean, not that he doesn't pick up the phone all the time, he does, but he had candidates that he was on an 8th, 9th, 10th point of contact with zero engagement, zero response, had the software write the text messages, and the candidates responded. Like, so no offense to Rich that, the software writes better or was more compelling, but it was, and it got engagement and response. So, I think when we can take someone that's that big of a biller and show how it makes them more efficient, it means, we should be looking at a solution like this industry-wide.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've known Rich for a while now. Fantastic guy. I hope he definitely does not listen to this episode, but
no, we hope he listens. No, we hope he listens, because you know what? Tomorrow, so you won't have this published yet. It'll already be published tomorrow. We're putting a press release out. Rich Rosen, I could not be more proud of that man. He crossed the $1 million mark in billing in August.
Wow, 8 months.
8 months. So all those young recruiters, new recruiters listening, right? $1 million in individual billing. He doesn't have a team of recruiters behind him. He doesn't have a team of sourcers behind him. He did $1 million by August. We're so proud of him.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. And I know I've done a few calls with him, and he takes those calls at 7:30 a.m. his time. And which is, so he is a workhorse as well, right? So he works hard. I work 12, 14 hours a day. And it's always nice to talk to some of headhunters, right, who are putting in the long hours, putting in the work, and the smarts like Rich does, and getting tremendous results out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's fantastic. Okay, so one of these days I should even get Rich on this podcast. But yeah, so I want to talk. So there are a lot of you write some very interesting stuff all the time on these different Facebook groups and LinkedIn and things like that. Tricia, I want to ask something, right? Like, what is that one belief about recruiting, or how the recruiting world operates that is very contrarian to a commonly accepted truth in our industry?
Yeah, I can give you, I could probably rattle off a list of them, but probably the one that tends to fall most contrarian, I am not a fan of MPC marketing.
Okay.
I don't think that we should do MPC marketing as an industry. And there's a whole group, a whole subset of the recruiting industry that will argue upside down and inside out that MPC marketing is the best way to generate new business. I don't think it is. So for those of the listeners that maybe are more new to the industry, MPC stands for most placeable candidate. So the premise of the technique is that what you do is you find a candidate that has a very good skill set, that's in demand, that has realistic expectations, that'll work exclusively with you. You determine what it is they want in their career, who they specifically would like to go to work for. The candidate often comes up with the list. And then what you do as the recruiter is you call into those companies, and everybody's script sounds pretty much the same. Like, I had an opportunity last week or yesterday to recruit an individual that is exceptional at this, and this, and here's something about their, innate characteristics, what makes them exceptional. And Mr. Hiring Manager, when I asked them which companies they had the most amount of respect for in the industry, they said yours. So I was hoping that maybe I could set up an exploratory conversation for the two of you to decide if maybe there's a good fit, and I'm only going to charge you 30% of their base salary in order to hire them.
Yeah.
Like, that's MPC marketing, right? And I think it's really difficult when, like, if you're a recruiter and all you want is transactional deal flow, go ahead and MPC market. I think it's great. But if you have any interest in being a strategic partner with your clients, in being taking a consultative approach, stepping above the noise of the paper slinging, pretend headhunters, recruiters, you can't lead with MPC marketing. Nobody wants to pay you a full fee for a candidate that you already have in your back pocket that's likely a rejection from someone else. It's just a bad model.
So on the contrary, though, one can argue that it's a great way to have a foot in the door with a client, right? You start a conversation, see how that goes, and that's one way for you to start a conversation and start cultivating a relationship that grows into something which is, a much more engrossed partnership. Don't you think, MPC is a great way to get that started?
I don't. I think that when you do MPC marketing, you make it all about the candidate, and you sound like we sound like carnival barkers. Like, I got a candidate, here's my candidate, who wants my candidate? You want a candidate? No, right? Like, we're making it all about this one person that maybe you might have an interest in interviewing, instead of making it about, I'm an extraordinary headhunter, and I want to determine whether or not I want to represent you in the market. Not, are you interested in my candidate? That doesn't establish a strategic relationship, and first impressions matter. Once you are in that box of, the same recruiters that are slinging candidates, they're not coming to you and giving you $100,000 fees to, aid them in hiring a co-founder or a C-suite in a startup or a bigger company. Like, very rarely are there recruiters out there that have done extremely well with MPC marketing. Yes, there are. And I wouldn't recommend they change anything they're doing. If it's working for them, they're doing something right. I think with 30 years of experience training and coaching thousands of recruiters across all disciplines and in many countries, that it is incredibly difficult to start a relationship with an MPC candidate and turn it into something that is long-term, that is going to stick around for you when the market isn't quite this hot.
Okay, all right. So, however, I will probably have to check data, but my guess would say that, an MPC campaign might just have hire, so let's say you're running a sequence of emails, right, to get attention of a prospective client. An MPC campaign might have a higher response rate, right? So so you are kind of expanding the top of your funnel. Why should somebody be giving that up for taking something, with a lower conversion rate, maybe higher value, right? Maybe, that probably is definitely true, but with lower conversion rate and a much more effort going into it. So what would you say to that?
Well, I would say that new business development for executive level direct search doesn't come from an email cadence.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It doesn't. I mean, if you want to go into a company and say, I am going to be your strategic partner and help you put in place the executive team necessary to ensure the success of your overall business, I am going to consult with you and hold your hand through that process while we work together to select that team. In order for me to do that, it's going to cost about $400,000. So I'm not getting that business sending a series of automated emails. Like, there's this weird thing that has happened in recruiting as technology has progressed, okay? Yeah. I'm ancient. I didn't have a computer on my desk. There wasn't the internet when I started recruiting, right? So as the technology has become more and more prevalent, the recruiting industry as a whole has become much more reluctant to get on the phone and do actual outside sales. We are salespeople. That's what we do for a living. We aren't marketing automation platform administrators.
Right.
That's not what we are as recruiters. We're salespeople. And so it is my personal opinion that if you want to, play with the big boys, you got to act like one. And that means get on the phone and get a meeting. That's what you need. You need to get a meeting with a decision maker that is responsible for hiring. That's it. Get the meeting. So there's a lot of different things that we have to do in order to get the meeting, but I don't think one of them is dangling a candidate. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're going to MPC market, the number of times that people MPC market the wrong candidate is astronomical. In order for you to successfully MPC market, Manan, the candidate has to not be active, but actually be interested and have a reason that they want to make a move. They have to be in high demand and have reasonable salary expectations. They have to be eminently flexible in their geography. They have to have nothing holding them back from making the right move if that right move presents itself. And you have to have a commitment that they're going to interview anywhere you set them up. I would say in my almost 30 years of recruiting, I have encountered, I could count on two hands the number of candidates in 30 years that would truly have qualified as an MPC. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you are wildly discerning and the person fits all of that criteria, once every couple years, you might have someone that it makes sense to take to market. But if that's your primary business development strategy, then you're marketing the wrong candidates and all you're doing is hurting your credibility with brand new companies that don't know you. Why do we want to attach our reputation to someone else? Shouldn't we be able to just stand on our own 2 feet and say, here's the value proposition for why you want to work with me, and it doesn't have anything to do with an individual candidate that I'm dangling in front of you?
Sure. No,
that makes sense?
That makes sense. So again, right, like it's also a question of targeting, and you mentioned something that's of great great importance, and that is the value proposition. Hey, by the way, I want to also mention this, right? Like you talked about how recruiters are salespeople, and that's basically why we started Recruiterflow. So I don't know if I don't we don't I don't think I talk about this enough on how we went about founding of Recruiterflow. So I've been a software developer turned into a software sales guy. Um, my first company got acquired. I was in my second company, and in charge of growth at this large media company. Our internal recruiting wasn't very helpful, let me put it that way. So I said, okay, it's not that I don't know anything about recruiting. I know how to do sales. I have done inside sales. So I'm just going to put together my sales tools and start recruiting that way. It was wildly successful. And that's what, that was the genesis of Recruiterflow, right? Like, so sales tools were so miles ahead of all the recruiting tools.
Oh yeah.
And I said, okay, this recruiting thing, although I don't know much about it, is not really that different from sales. In fact, it's a little bit harder because you have to kind of sell on both sides and on the client side as well as on the candidate side. This is not an easy job, and the tools, they're still, this is 21st century, come on, kind of a thing. And yeah, so that was the starting point for Recruiterflow, right? So our only hypothesis was that, okay, recruiting tools are miles behind sales tools. Let's just get them there. And yeah, so we weren't too far off, I would say, from our original hypothesis. But yeah, coming back to value proposition, Tricia, how should a recruiter, right? So let's put a real example over here, right? So let's say I am a headhunter in New York City with let's say I've been recruiting. I've been working at one of the large tech companies and have been recruiting for them for let's say 5 years, and now I an agency. Again, I'm going to be focused on placing, let's say, software developers at seed to Series C tech companies. Very, very common use case. Now, this is something and there are probably, just in New York City, more than 100 other recruiting agencies doing the same thing. How would I, set myself apart in a situation like this?
Okay, that's a great question. And I think it requires two things. One, recruiters are so cheap. Oh my God, are recruiters cheap? Like all we need to do is have a phone and a computer and we should be able to make money, right?
Yeah.
But every other company in every other industry has some level of marketing budget, right? A budget that's allocated for new client acquisition.
Yeah.
And recruiters don't have that. It's really kind of peculiar. I mean, certainly the larger firms are going to have, an allocated marketing budget, but I'm talking about like a solo practitioner or a firm that has, a handful of people. They don't have a marketing budget. So they're trying to generate new clients and net new logos, but they're not willing to invest any money. But let's change that. Let's say they are willing to invest a little money. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. Mm-hmm. What I would say is identify, let's stop having our MPC candidates decide who our clients are going to be, and why don't we decide who we want to represent in the market? You look at the companies that you think have the most compelling story, because it makes it easiest for you to sell, so you have a higher probability of closing the deal. So let's go and let's identify 10 companies, 20 companies, 100 companies, but I'd start with 10, that you really want to do business with. Now, let's come up with some type of very clever campaign that is the only purpose of it, the only call to action is to get the meeting. That's it. We're not trying to convince them to hire us. We can't do that in marketing outreach. Right. What we need to do is get the meeting. Like, we need to have the right goal. Okay, the goal isn't get the client, the goal is get the meeting. Right. So how can we get the meeting? If we're asking a different kind of question, we get a better answer, right? So what could I do to get the meeting? I had a gentleman in a client in an arguably more challenging, more competitive market in New York City that places wealth managers.
Wow.
And he was trying for a long time to get into, the head of wealth management for one of the leading investment firms in the city. And emails and voicemails weren't cutting it. Yeah. They weren't cutting it. So he came to us and said, what do I do? And what we did, what we recommended he do, and what he did was he went and he spent about, $100, $200, and he bought a carving knife, a beautiful carving knife, like for the kitchen, and put it in a box, like it had the velvet inlay. It was gorgeous. And the card said, thank you for carving out time to meet with me.
That's clever. Okay.
That was it. Okay. So if I spend 200, and I'm not saying go send carving knives to everybody. Like he engraved the knife with the guy's last name, right? Which is a sweet little touch, because it's so personal. It's not content marketing, it's contact marketing. Right. Okay, so it's picking out specifically the individuals that you want to do business with and researching those people, learn a lot about them, learn about where they live, read all the reviews for the best restaurants, and send them a gift certificate to the restaurant and say, I'd like you to take you and your spouse or you and your family out to dinner on me. I'd just like 15 minutes to introduce myself. Well, you got to get the meeting.
That definitely would. I would say, 8 times out of 10, that definitely would.
Okay, so let's spend $100 or $200 10 times, have 8 discovery meetings, run those meetings so well that they are crystal clear why you're better than everybody else. Give them a proposal that knocks their socks off with a giant engagement fee attached to it. And of those 8, 4 or more will close. Like, that feels like a great way to spend $2,000, $200 each for 10 people, right?
Yeah. So, but I want to come back to this, right? Like, how would I, if I were, so let's say I'm in, I get my 10 minutes with the person, right? Like, and this guy is probably being hounded by 20 other recruiters in the market. I still need to convey my value proposition. That's going to be different.
Right.
So I'm successful at getting, my prospects' attention. How would I deliver a much better value than all of my competition?
Well, I think at that point, what I would probably say to the hiring manager, if they were asking me that question in that meeting, Manan, I got the meeting with you. I'm going to be able to get to candidates no one else can, because I'm clever and I'm persistent, and I've proven that to you just by my mere presence.
Well, no, that's fantastic. Now it sounds like a movie plot, though.
Well, I think, you're touching on something real important, because yes, we're salespeople, but we're also actors. And what actors do is practice their scripts, right? Like we have to be able to deliver the script, and it has to have the right inflection, and it has to have the right delivery. And I think there's a lot of recruiters that are like, I don't need a script. I'm 30 years in, I still use scripts.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it's something, we're actors. If you want to be a good recruiter, be a good salesperson, be a good actor.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So one of my earliest sales mentors, I actually went on a client meeting with him, his client, not mine. So, he just, I just tagged along. And there was, it was just one of the most astonishing client meetings that I had seen. And after that meeting was done, we were on our way back. We were driving back to his office, and I said that, I have not known you to be this funny. And he said that I have the same jokes. I have a repertoire of about 15, 20 jokes. I would use, a few of them in all the meetings, and my associates would laugh at them like as if they are hearing it for the first time. They are hearing that for the 100th time, and like each and every aspect of that meeting, if you think that it was impromptu or a natural, it's not. It's everything is scripted, well rehearsed, well practiced, right? So, and that just changed. I mean, I was a young kid, just 2 years out of university. I hadn't done anything other than engineering in my life, and the first time I was learning sales, and it just changed how I look at sales as a process and as an interaction between two people.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that when you're going through the sales process, if you can get the meeting, you have an opportunity to demonstrate to the hiring manager just how different you are by how you run that meeting and the caliber of questions that you ask. Now, I'll tell you a secret, okay? And this is probably one of the hardest pieces in our entire methodology to implement, okay? Our sales process, engagement. First, you have to engagement. It could be, things like carving knives. It could be, email sequences, voicemails, whatever it takes to get the engagement. We have a lot of scripts and a lot of ideas. Sure. Then you schedule a meeting. And that first meeting's like 30 minutes, okay? And we have the whole agenda, how to run the meeting, the actual like movie script for it, right? Then if you decide you like what you hear, you schedule a second discovery meeting. And again, the whole playbook for that is all laid out. And then you go to proposal, and the proposal knocks their socks off. But here's the catch. In the first 30-minute discovery meeting, we never take a requirement.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
We don't take it. If they are verbally vomiting the requirement on us, like, Manan, I'm so glad that we're talking. Here's what I need. I need a software developer in New York at a seed company, and I want to pay them $130,000. They need to have full stack Java. And what we do in that moment is say, slow down. I'm not in a position yet to start learning about your job because I don't know enough about you to decide if I want to represent you in the market. So let's back up and let me get a good understanding of your business, your strategic objectives, and what you're trying to accomplish over the next 18 months. Then we'll broadly look at the impact of talent gaps in that strategic plan. But I don't know if you want to throw that at me right now, we're probably not well aligned.
Yeah, that just turns the whole table on them, right? Because they're not used to hearing that from headhunters.
Right. And so what we want to do is be so different in that business development process. And, step number one is you know what? I'm not performing for you. You're performing for me, right? I'm determining whether or not I want to represent you in the market.
Yeah.
And then we'll decide whether or not you want to hire me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So it just turns the tables a little bit. It sets the whole relationship up differently. Now, when you're advising on offers, you're listened to, right? Now, when you say, hey, I know this candidate doesn't look like the right fit on paper, but you've hired me to counsel, and I need you to take my counsel and have an exploratory conversation. And now they listen. But if you're a carnival barker shoving candidates that were someone else's rejects into your client who hasn't even raised their hand to say that they needed the person or that they wanted to work with you, I think it's very hard to build long-term strategic relationships.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that, I mean, it's a lot like whether you are, so in software sales, we have, this kind of a funny terminology, right? So whether you are hunting rabbits, hunting deers, hunting elephants, or hunting whales, right? So, and this sounds a lot like you are in the business of hunting whales, right? So I also like to use this kind of a metaphor, right? Like recruiting, although most people treat it as a fishing net kind of a business, it's actually a harpoon kind of a business.
Oh, yes.
And the day you understand this difference, your whole approach of how you look at your market, because again, right, like let's take a look at, if you want to bill $1 million a year, right? So that's a fantastic number. That would put you probably in top 0.1% of recruiters in the world, maybe, right? So let's say that's where you want to be. And if you are able to build that kind of relationships with clients, you don't need more than 20 to do that. And
oh gosh, in some cases you don't even need 20.
yeah, exactly. I'll tell you the most, and I have repeated this stuff over and over again. So our regular listeners are probably going to find this extremely repetitive, but I get to look at a lot of data of the industry, right? And the most incredible thing that I have found is that the more successful firms, and when I say more successful, I mean dollars billed per recruiter in the team, actually have fewer clients. They actually make much more money from one client than having more clients. They have they are getting repeat businesses, retained businesses from the same hiring manager, from the same client over and over again, each and every, let's say, quarter, every month, whatever that cadence is. And they are way more successful. And it just made so much sense to me that, hey, if as a full desk recruiter, I am not spending hours and hours every day, acquiring new clients, and instead I'm spending that time actually delivering for those 10 clients that I have, they're going to keep coming back to me again and again. And I'm going to become that person that whenever they have a new role, I'm the first person they call that, hey, blah, 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 this is what I need. What can we do here, right? So, and that is where you want to be, right? So, and I find it extremely astonishing. The first time I saw this, it just blew my mind, right? Like more successful recruiters have fewer clients.
I fall into that category. I have been fortunate in my professional career to have two clients, two different clients. One was Accenture and one was Cognizant, okay? And for each of those two companies, one of them I placed over 75 senior managers, associate partner level people, and the other one I placed over 100.
Wow.
And when you can work with a company at that level, those were 100% contingency placements. 100% contingent. Both of those relationships spanning multiple years and multiple groups. Boy, at Accenture, I supported 23, 24 different practice areas in our firm. So when you're able to have a contingency client that's at that size with that level of need, it'll beat a retainer or an engagement fee all day long. Like sometimes contingency is the way to go when you can do that level of volume at an executive level.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are like probably one of the biggest in IT and consulting, right? So I think the only firm bigger in IT services that I can think of is probably TCS, and Infosys probably would be bigger than these two. So yeah.
You know what, what we focused in, I spent about 15 years where all I did was the only people I placed were executives in business development and delivery management with a deal size or P&L in excess of 20 million for global outsourcing providers. That's all I did, right? So I knew what everybody was, but I was across industries, all different industries. But because it was a consulting world, we talk a lot about a concept I think that isn't, I don't tell a lot of people about it. So this is a big reveal for you, Manan. When we look at clients, we divide them into profit center and cost center. Okay, so every role in every company is either going to be in the profit center or in the cost center. So if we take a recruiter as a very easy example, if you have a recruiter working for you, that is cost center. They're supporting the people that are generating the revenue. If I have a recruiter work for me, then they're profit center because they're generating revenue in an agency or a consulting environment, right? Yeah. So if what we do in every role, like if I place accounting and finance, if I place into Deloitte, then they are profit center. If I place into Kraft Foods, then they are cost center, right? So if as a recruiter, I can step up and look at the type of companies I want to represent, if I focus in a profit center, there's more urgency, there's more opportunity loss for the client if the job isn't filled. They pay a premium to the people that they hire, and our fees are contingent on the salaries, so we make more money. Yeah. So when we're looking at who we should target as clients, I think that everybody should have at least one major profit center client, which is either somebody in an agency, somebody in a consulting firm, anybody billable that generates revenue, like salespeople. We talked about Rich Rosen. Rich is 100% profit center. All he places is salespeople.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So it matters. And I think that people that have been in recruiting a long time have never actually sat back and strategically decided who they want to represent in the market. Yeah. They've just let their candidates pick the companies for them. Yeah. And I don't think that's the best way to run a search firm.
You're hitting on something over here. So there is, I have, whenever somebody new joins in our marketing or sales, kind of tell them, right? Like people are driven by two things, either greed or fear. There are only two reasons why somebody is going to buy Recruiterflow, right? So, or anything for that matter at all. But And we have to appeal to the greed and not the fear. If you are able
Right.
to
The
appeal to
fear is
someone's
is
greed,
your cost center.
yeah, I mean, this is probably, my choice of words makes me sound very cynical, but it's basically what you put it in a much better way, right? So I just call it greed and fear. You called it process center, cost center, but it's basically the same concept.
It is. And you know what? I think that if recruiters could start strategically deciding who they want to do business with and not going in begging for the business, right? Like, that's not how you do it. You don't beg for the business.
Yeah,
So
man.
if they can approach it that way and specifically target the companies that they want, life just gets easier.
Yeah, you are right. And the and especially if you're if you're new into the whole thing about sales, right? Like, you might be a great recruiter, you probably be probably new to sales. People can smell desperation from a mile away, so you never want to put yourself in that position, right? So
Gosh, no.
uh, and so you always want to have the conversation from the position of strength. um, and that's when they will learn to respect you, trust you, and that's when good things start happening to you. um, no, that's great. So, Tricia, this has been a very scintillating conversation. I think we can go on for hours and hours, but we are nearing nearing the end of our time here. Um, I want to ask one last thing about, so tell us about one book or a podcast or something that has had a profound impact on how you think and how you look at the world.
Um, I couldn't possibly ever pick a single podcast or a single book. I wish I could. I will tell you a person, though.
Mm-hmm.
I am such a huge Tony Robbins fan. I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan. Like, I went through a lot of his training just in like audio, video stuff, and I went to my first live event in 2017. I did business mastery. So I was in a room for 15 hours a day for 6 straight days with 2,400 entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And it was it was a life-changing experience, right? It was all focused on business, and incredibly impactful. And then I went back last year and did what they call Date with Destiny, which is basically that same kind of immersive event, but it's about your personal life, not your business.
Okay.
And that I had incredibly high expectations for, and it exceeded my expectations. So I'm actually doing that one over again this December. I'm doing it virtually, and I'm very excited about it. But when it comes to mindset, when it comes to discipline, when it comes to fulfillment in your life, I haven't learned more from anyone than Tony Robbins.
Well, that's fantastic. Okay, I can't say I know Tony. I know Tony very well, or I have seen anything about him. But I definitely will. And Tricia, if any of our listeners want to find you, get in touch, how do they do that?
Oh, they can go to moreessentials.com, which is MOOREESSENTIALS. But even better than that, I am a believer that if you want people to answer the phone when you call them, then you should answer your phone. So Manan, my cell phone number is 630-240-4454. And if there are any of the listeners that would like to talk to me about our training, our coaching, even our free training that we do, they are more than welcome to call me, text me, go to our website, send me an email. I answer my own phone.
Well, wow, that's a bold move here. Putting your cell phone out there publicly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the description, put a link to Mood Essentials as well as your LinkedIn profile.
That sounds delightful. It has been absolutely a pleasure to talk to you, Manan, and I wish you continued success with Recruiterflow.
Well, thank you so much, Tricia. The pleasure's all mine.
Thank you, sir.